we have already discussed random access memory, RAM. So what is this RAM? It is accessing memory randomly. Randomly means I am picking a student randomly. Randomly I am calling. Similarly, this RAM is accessing memory randomly. This random accessing is called as random accessing memory. Here, two types of RAMs are available to us. One is static RAM. This was used in olden days. Nowadays, we are not using any static RAM. Second one is a dynamic RAM. We also call that as DRAM. In this DRAM, we can use RAM. For what purpose we are using RAM? The CPU wants to communicate with the components on the motherboard. Then CPU wants to communicate with the memory. That data which is being used by the CPU now, present data, that will be stored in the RAM because it is memory. Memory means it will be always made up of some registers. Registers means flip-flops. Flip-flop means internal transistors. So here, this data, whenever we are accessing this data, it has to synchronize or do not synchronize. At what time we have to access the data? CPU is waiting. At what time it will give the data? Like we will wait for some other person. At what time he will send the data? So it is waiting for the clock because it does not know. CPU does not know when the data will come. It is asynchronous because it does not know at what time data will come. Later, synchronous dynamic RAM, SDRAM. Synchronous dynamic RAM. So here, when we are taking this SDRAM, here CPU clock, CPU is telling, don't worry. Whenever I am sending data, I will send a clock pulse. When it is sending the clock pulse, then it will be ready to access the data. It is very efficient because we are not wasting the time. It is not waiting. We already told, at this time I will send the data. Who is telling that time? Clock pulse. Because in CPU we don't have any 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock or 3 o'clock time. So here clock pulse is telling, I am sending the data with a clock pulse. After sending the clock pulse, then the RAM, whenever the accessing the data from the RAM or whenever CPU wants to communicate, then it will depend upon this clock pulse from the CPU, RAM will communicate or RAM will access the data for which CPU will operate. Now, mainly because our topic is DDRAM, we are discussing about two types of the DDRAMs, DDR2 and DDR3. These are SDRAMs. Okay, synchronous dynamic RAMs. That's why we have discussed this concept. Before discussing DDR2, DDR3, there was one more SDRAM, that was DDR1. Here, DDR1 was used in olden days. It was operated with the asynchronous mechanism. But these two, DDR2 and DDR3, are being operated with the synchronous mechanism. Asynchronous or synchronous, which is better now? Because you have understood the principle. Synchronous is better to us because we can understand at what time the data will come. So it is better we are operating with the synchronous. These two are the synchronous RAM. Compare it to DDR1, in DDR2, data rate is double.